Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's Sunday. Rather sunny and blustery day here in San Francisco at Stowe Lake. Over the past couple days, I've been listening to a lot of Roger Penrose. What a brilliant and beautiful spirit he is. In his 90s, one of the minds that certainly had a very deep impact on my own. I have a few thoughts in my awareness, a few pivots that I want to explore. And I'm going to start with a two-word phrase, danger paper. This word danger is in English particularly interesting to me. As a child, I was deeply impressed and confused by anger, this emotion. And though I did occasionally experience something resembling it, the kind of anger that I saw in my parents was occasionally, much more in my father, who was from Brooklyn and Italian, than my mother, who was from Canada, and probably we have Huiguenot ancestors on her side and Sicilians on my dad's side. My father wasn't commonly angry, but when he was, it was volcanic. Very, very serious. Shake the walls, yelling. And this danger word rather obviously contains the anger word. It's almost as if a French person was saying danger, right? The anger. I wonder if French people see this in the English word danger, and I don't know what the French word for danger is. But this D letter is very important. I mean, each of the letters is profound. The letters are incredible seeds of wisdom and understanding when their histories and their spirits are revealed to us. It's not as if the letters have specific root meanings. This is like all things in consciousness, right? This is a toy that becomes more profound the more intelligently you play with it. So, although I did produce an essay on my website called Alphabetics, in which I provide a kind of what I think of as a basis for this kind of play, I'm worried that humans will think it's declarative, right? It tells you what the letters mean. And the letters don't have this kind of meaning. they don't have a direct, explicit lexicality where you could just write down the meanings and now you'd have the lexicon. This is not what's going on. It's much more like spirit principles, or angels even. And there's so much here to see and learn and remember. So, you see, in listening to Penrose, he talks around topics that are crucially important to the development of his intelligence, which is certainly more than merely ordinarily human. Penrose is a kind of an angel in human skin, and there's lots of those walking around. But what is this word angel? So the relative the correlative aspects of letters and light are unimaginably profound. It's almost as if the spirits of light produced something resembling their children in letters. And of course, the letters employ angles and curves, in English and similar alphabets. I'm so overwhelmed with the profundity of my topic that I actually don't know where to go. But I'm going to keep making face noises in the hopes that a route will appear, a shining path, not in the sense of the strange organizations that may have taken that name. More in the sense of the evening light on the Western Ocean as the sun is setting, right? Really, it's an actual portal arises. Nearly none of the humans recognize this portal, but ancients did, and some indigenous people, and some unusually minded moderns still do. But Penrose was talking about the paths of photons and their histories, and what happens in singularities, what he imagines to happen, or to become the case in specific kinds of singularities and trapped surfaces and so forth. And one of the things he talks about, all of these matters are incredibly profound, and they do not necessarily only relate to physics. Physics is a kind of meta-topic that you can crib metaphors from to understand features of awareness, organisms. I don't say biology because biology is dissective, right? The principles are not pursued. What are pursued are mechanical derivations of the principles that can then be somehow utilized, right? It's very left hemispheric. And in all these matters, light is fundamental. So I'm going to circle back now to this da'anga, this danger word. And the D, you have a vertical angle. Very important in English, the difference between the lowercase d and b, because these are inversions of each other, right? And in the lowercase d, the circle is at the bottom and can be understood to be either behind or on the left. And in the B, it's to the right or in front of the vertical angle. But this D can mean things like, it can be understood to represent being aware that letters do not occur in isolation the way we think about things. Yeah, we think about things, if I say the cup, it's presented to the mind in absolute distinction, as if it is the only thing that exists, right? So too with apple, the insect bee, right? We see a bee. In our minds, if we are not, it's funny, I was going to say anosognotic. That's not what I meant. I meant aphantasic. It's so funny because having listened to Penrose, I have naturally adopted some of his beautiful peculiarities of speaking. He's such a warm mind. Yeah. His warmth really comes through. He's not merely a technician. He's very interested in something. You know, you can hear him when he's speaking in his in his dotage, so to speak. Although what a sharp elder he is. You can hear him. As he's speaking, he kind of tastes the idea, right? He tastes it. And I know I'm bird walking wildly here, but it's probably worth it. So yesterday I heard him tell a story for the first time, which I had not, I think, heard before. And it was quite profound. He was a child, and like many of us, he was facing a terrifying danger. Truly terrifying for children is the situation where we are sat at the dinner table and there are things on the plate which, as far as we are concerned, are not only not food, they are a kind of recursively self-amplifying promise of impossible torment. And, those of us who grew up with ancestors who came through the Great Depression or who had suffered incredible poverty and or starvation, often, we heard very serious admonitions, you will eat that food, right? So his mother had, put spinach on his plate, and it was lying there in a sort of horrifying lump. And I remember experiences like this from my own childhood, and it was like being pushed. It was like someone nudging you toward the edge of a cliff. Like it seemed. It seemed so profoundly horrifying in some cases that death or any punishment might actually be preferable. Nonetheless, so Penrose tells this story where, one of the negotiations parents would sometimes employ in these situations is they would, demand that we have a go at it, right? Have a go at it. Try it, eat some. And so, Penrose, as a child, is faced with the terrifying spinach and realizes that if he, while his mother isn't looking, recomposes the glob to appear as a semicircle, he may be able to escape the danger. and the caper works, right? His mother notices that the spinach has changed shape on his plate and presumes that this is due to him having eaten some, or in her love of her child, just ignores the fact that he hasn't eaten any of it. We don't know. We don't know whether Penrose's mom realized the ploy or not. But, she said that's good enough. And this, of course, was posed as...
Yeah, have a great time. Yeah, thanks for pointing us in the right direction.
This Penrose was offering as the beginnings of his interest in geometry, right? Because a glob, transformed into a semicircle, saved him from the horror of having to eat the disgusting spinach. I won't even mention the whole problem in Penrose's youth and mine that orbited the cartoon topic of Popeye and his spinach, which was basically a kind of an advertising protocol that leaked its way into an extremely strange, if not psychotic, cartoon context. So, you might be wondering, what the fuck does this have to do with D, or danger? Well, first of all, notice that what Penrose did was transform the geometry of the spinach on the plate into the shape of a D, right? And this D, think of all of the words, but specific words, principle words, that begin with D. Divide, dissect, determine, describe. And often you'll find that the consonants and the vowels, they have a very important symbiotic relationship in the literal magic they accomplish in human minds. These letters structure human cognition in a way not dissimilar to how visual perception structures human cognition, but they structure the metaposition of human cognition, which is thought, right, and conception. Very important. To conceive of is to receive a seed-like element in consciousness that has resultant sequelae. So we see like divide, D-I, right? To cut an individual, right? To separate into parts this I, the self, an entity, a being, a process, a situation, a memory. So this D letter often, not always, and it really matters what letters are around another letter if we're trying to understand the principles expressed there and how they are expressed and which nuanced features of the possibility space of the expression of some letter is being highlit or emphasized. So this danger word, I mean, the very simplistic anatomy of this word is something like dividing being, or the first principle, progeneration, right? Like dividing light, yeah? Light as progenitor. A is this first principle which can often be understood as light, but also has a lot to do with angles. It's angle. And the N, in this case, and again, I'm being very casual, were I to sit down and actually work this out, a lot of different things would come into play to determine how I might sketch the strange spider's web of a single word. By the way, welcome to being hyperlexic. So, N. So it can mean like presently, immediate, now, N-O-W. Nature over waves, right? Nature, and then unity in the O, and then waves. Yeah, and choppy waves, right there, pointy. G is to draw together, right? So we're drawing this this cutting. It's becoming very highly focused and explicit. Cutting is always dangerous. But it also means filled with potential, right? Gravid, D-A-N-G. E, emerging, right? From the gravity, emerging. From the cutting, emerging. And then R, radiant, right? It radiates outward. Or excuse me, yeah, E-R. D-A-N-G-E-R. Now anger is like, it's overwhelming, right? It doesn't necessarily cut. It's a field. It's a field of energy. But, and a different word. But these letters, these are, in a sense, should be understood to be like the alphabetics of the properties of origin, light, relation, description. They are spirits. They are not. They are the standing reduction of spiritual principles. They have always been this. The moderns don't know this. It's different, but nonetheless similar in ideographic languages, like Chinese. The alphabets of humans are very profound. You have many alphabets that are mostly, swirling, curvy things, which are amazing compared to the stark, angular anatomy of the English alphabet and similar alphabets. Now I'm not going to go into B here because I want to get to the paper part of Danger Paper. And if you imagine P to mean something like the interiority of mind, in this case, right, we're going to play as if this is the meaning. Then PAP, right, it shows you the capacity of the transmission of structuring intelligence across time, space, and distance through the aegis of light, right? Now you can say, well, what about Braille? Yes, fine, but Braille was composed by people who see. And it was composed on a world of humans who see. And actually, I'm not sure Braille was composed by humans who see. It may not have been thus. So I revoke that previous statement. What I meant was Braille was composed in the minds of a species that is extremely visually oriented. And even those among us who are without the visual senses, and there's a broad topology of different ways that can be implemented or expressed. Braille still arises on a world where light is, right? And even blind people can feel sunlight, perhaps moonlight. And if they're extremely sensitive, as some must either have been or be, starlight. So this P uses the propagation features of A, the first principle, right? That goes forth. It goes forth. Yeah. So the first the first three letters, right? P, A, P. Originating mind. A is the transmission. The next P is the receiving mind. E is the energy or experience. Funny that the word experience begins with X. What is being excluded or accepted or explicit here? So originating mind, the propagation principle in A, receiving mind, the next P, E, expression, emergence, evolution, evanescence, and then again R, it radiates out into many minds. Letters are a way for the spirit of a mind to cross the gulf between, in time, space, and situation, between one being and another being, and then receiving, and then essentially a kind of decryption, right? Knowledge, experience, insight, awareness, imagination, conception, these can be encoded in letters and transmitted to others by changing the surface of the paper such that like the paper reflects light and the letters are kind of singularities on the page, right? Unique singularities. And this principle, though our experience of it is usually only emergent from the experiences and encodings humans have made, this principle is universal, right? Writing is it's a specific human instancing of a principle that is universally understood, and even animals and insects and so on, they can recognize something that resembles writing in the forms and features of the natural world. So yeah, now you have it, danger paper. I have a couple of other things also in my mind. And it's not my goal today to delve deep into alphabetics. That can become an extremely pedantic or didactic topic if not handled playfully. So this other thing is this is me, doing Darren's usual dance. Why do we imagine the mechanics of light, but not the metaphysics of it? This is insane. We have minds because there is a star here. That star is progenerating the mind space of humans moment to moment. Were it to go away, no minds. No organisms, no living world, no diddly squat around here that we are familiar. Something would still be going on. There'd be no way and no one to refer to it, especially in any kind of human way. So why do we not take generally as beings, right? Not just as Americans or, Persians or Indonesians. Why do we not take seriously the progenerative metaphysics of light? The physics community certainly takes light very seriously, but they don't tend to think about the metaphysics of it. And what do I mean by metaphysics? Well, it's complicated. What I mean is insight about the nature of that which is. Insight from beyond the common human representational lexicon of purposes and concerns and protocols and so forth. It's very easy for me to see as if the organisms of Earth, much like the letters, right? These are direct expressions of the principles of origin in being itself, in existence itself. Now, I don't have to care much, though I do usually have a perspective on this, whether the universe is, quote, the creation of a being or array of beings. But one thing that seems blatantly obvious to me is that it is entirely impossible that it is some kind of mere accident of processes that, we don't know how they got started, but it just turned out this way. Around here on Earth, just a mechanical accident. You start with this big bang, and whether there's consecutive bangs or previous bangs, it doesn't really matter. Just then everything accidentally falls out of that. No fucking chance of that being true. And if that were true, then nature would evince that property as a feature of our common everyday experience that it would be incontrovertibly, blatantly obvious. It's not possible that this is going on. I'm here in a stand of redwoods, and my God, the beauty. To be alive as a distinct being in the physical layer of existence is unimaginably profound when it is not terrifying and agonizing. These trees are beings just like my mother was a being. Yeah? And they are making the world alive by being. In case it's not obvious, they are also a source of danger. Tree limbs can fall on you. And they are the primary source of paper. Danger paper. I'm not even going to go into the whole problem of paper cuts, but or origami or any of that. Leaving that right out. So when I see living forms, I have come to understand at this late phase of my rapidly declining existence that in the same way I have a fingerprint, the organisms are the fingerprint of time-space. They are its sensitive, vulnerable, expressive, active, agented beings. They're fully fledged beings, each organism, and all their relationships and the living places they compose together, and the minds they compose together, and the more than merely minds they comprise and enact. This is all pure miracle. I mean, it's blatant, like fall down on my knees and cry into the soft earth miracle. Most of the time, I'm trying to figure out where to get my next hamburger from or whatever, because like an idiot, I'm not a vegetarian yet. I have been. and I do strongly believe, especially in our situation as moderns, that it is both ethically and spiritually dangerous and probably just straight up wrong to eat meat. Of course, I mean, hamburgers at the restaurant and so forth. Very complex matter, not simple, but what the nations and corporations do to the animals and plants and insects and living places is abjectly malignant. There's no getting around it. There's no possible way of excusing it. Tormenting living beings, it just lands in every being on this world. This is one being first. And the hamburgers are wrapped up in paper, so you've got another kind of danger paper. But, most of the time I'm unaware of the miracle. Today it's a little unique. I can sense the miracle. And in dreaming, I sense the miracle. And in love, I sense the miracle. And in a moment when my heart opens, I sense the miracle. But these things are forgotten when I get into the Tesla and drive to Utah or wherever I end up going. I'm just trying to say I have the same prosaic experience as ordinary modern humans. I just have an extra dimension that's outside the cage that I like to play in and learn and remember and romance the spirits of insight and anamnesis. So this light stuff, right? I don't want to really talk about the physics, although world lines and light cones turn out to be one of those metaphors you can crib incredible potentials for insight about all phenomena from, including metaphor and mental phenomena. In fact, the metaphors employed to describe physical to describe physics, to describe the findings of physics, are incredibly profound. The Riemann sphere, get to know it. Manifolds, without that, good luck thinking. Topologies, crucially important to understanding the possibility space of mental activity itself. Right? There is a very direct correspondence between luminous phenomena and what we think of as cognition or mentation or, our interiority. These things are not merely related, they are children of the same damn thing. So, when I see the world, I usually think of the features of the world that aren't artificial, though the artificial features also have, it's impossible to make something outside of nature unless your concern is the well-being of organisms, in which case it becomes very obvious that machines are a very dumb idea. So yeah, when I see the world, I think of light producing the world. It's not merely a feature of my experience. Without it, there's no experiences, right? There are no experiencers, there are no minds, no bodies, no animals, nothing, right? So it's very important to see, in a sense, in a kind of first principles way, when we're trying to forge something resembling an ontology, which should always be a work in process, we have to look for, and Penrose is a genius at this. He was very concerned with generalizations over the properties, the derivable properties and features of time-space, and particular modes or forms of time-space. The 3+1 mode, right? 3 spatial dimensions, 1 of time, is crucially important to Penrose. This time thing, oh my God, don't get me started there. There isn't anything that is, there isn't anything which is separately time. Now in physics, it can usefully be treated this way. Yeah? But this is a treatment. There is no separable feature, in my view, that is time. Time rather emerges from the facts of multiplicity, of reference frame, beings, perspectives, bad machines. So it should be very obvious, right? In a universe with that is basically just one aparticulate solid. There's nothing else. Not even a context for it to be in. Then there's no time. Right? Time is a direct result of reference frames. So the idea that it exists by itself. In fact, I would love if anyone could suggest something that does exist entirely by itself, right? A separate thing, being, situation, phenomenon. Love to hear about that. And these are puzzles that are very useful to entertain. I was reading Waves in an Impossible Sea last night, and the author, whose name escapes me at the moment, began to speak of a stationary electron, and I thought, what the hell could that possibly be? Because what does it mean to be stationary, right? Not moving. Well, not moving in relation to what? I mean, one of the insights I had many years ago when I was beginning to write a novel called Tony's Angel was that it might well be that an angel is something that is absolutely stationary relative to all other beings. And this would confer upon the angel all kinds of transcendental abilities, right? Because nothing has this property. How could an electron be stationary? What would that even mean? And see, this is the problem with all of our theories, and it's a very important and vexing problem, which is that it's the problem of reference frames, right? Of what is a reference frame comprised? Now, for the physicists, this has a lot to do with world lines and light cones and so forth. And that's all well and good and brilliant, and I can crib endless insights from those toys, right? Endless, infinite insights from those toys. Now, of course, light cones and world lines are probably not as explicitly rendered as we are want to imagine them. All right, I'm going to switch the channel of my focus here, because there's another thing I want to get at, which is orbital relationships. This is something that was made very clear to me during my non-ordinary experience with the intelligences that I call Toymaker, very playfully. And it is that all relationships are orbital, right? So people are like, astrology, whatever. Those people are dumb, right? And so are the people who say the other thing, right? Astrology is what's going on. Right? So both of these things are weird. It's much more complex than that. But we know that the universe produced something like what we imagine our solar system to be. And orbiting is the fundamental feature of relational intimacy. I'm reminded of an astronomer, I don't remember which one it was, who had a cat that he called Satellite because he said, well, it orbits me. Think about the relationships, the incredibly deep, where they are not, bad, relationships that we have with pets. Yeah, you can learn a lot about what's really going on by looking carefully into these matters, right? What are cats? What's going on with cats, dogs, ferrets, mice, the synanthropes, the animals that are interested in and can prosper in the vicinity of humans. This is basically like animals going into deep space, of the deep space of nature. Humans are a bit like the deep space of nature, except that most of us are so checked out and fiendishly oriented, or disoriented is the right word, that we're just about as dangerous as the hard radiation and vacuum of space to organisms. This is part of why we are like deep space. Think about two human beings wandering around on the surface of the planet in the same temporal reference frame, and the planet is orbiting the sun and the moon is orbiting the earth, and it's orbiting, it's just like everything is like some kind of weird ballroom dance, right? And then in this fairy tale, man meets woman, sperm meets ovum. All of this spinning and orbiting is still going on, and out comes babies. Right? So this orbital thing turns out to be fundamental to the nature of relationships, time, space, thought, fertilization, all kinds of aspects of existence, and imaginal or mental activity. Think about when you have a word on the tip of your tongue, right? Okay, and it can be frustrating. You're trying to remember that actor's name from that movie that has a red car that jumps over things. Right. So first you get some orbital reference. Here's the problem. The hippocampus does not respond well to direct interrogation. It actually uses an orbital principle, so if you circle instead of going directly at, right? By the way, women also tend, in a very generalized way, to prefer an indirect approach rather than a direct approach. And many of us are like this. Whereas combat, particularly among males, who are certainly more generally inclined to it, is much more about angles, but also involves orbiting. Watch men in combat, and what you're going to see is very complex orbital dances. Yeah, this is not accidental, right? So, in my view, what am I trying to say here? What's the key takeaway? I'm gonna pause for a minute. You know, it's very funny, right? These talks that I give, I'm orbiting a topic, right? And then looking at the topic from different angles. We tend to think in a thing-like way about relationships, but you can see that they are uniquely close approach, go far away, close approach, go far away over time. Right? Everything is orbital. This whole orbiting feature of the way things are is incredibly fundamental. It's certainly not what electrons are necessarily doing around the nucleus of atoms. However, that principle is probably meta. Right? It's probably meta to the concept of orbits that we get from Newtonian physics, right? So these are some of the, I could probably go on at length, and I should, about orbital relationships. But I remember in my own experience, when I was speaking with a toy maker, except there was no speaking going on, mind sharing, mind melds, I don't know what to call it. Toy maker made it clear that the timing of the arisal of our relationship was based on a principle resembling orbits, and that it would not, this was a temporary close approach, in a sense. The orbital complexity of consciousness, what comprises something resembling the stars and the planets? What is the analogy for gravity, trajectory, and so forth? These are extremely rich features of our interiority that are profoundly generative of insight when employed not merely with cleverness, though that matters. Penrose was talking a lot about clever people who don't understand things but are really good at them anyway. Right? It's not cleverness, it's something more like sincerity and spiritual, the urgency of the imperatives of beauty and love that we bring to our existence as human beings. So these are some of my thoughts for today. So grateful to have had this time together. Deeply appreciate all of you who pay attention to my work, listen to my recordings. Take a moment, if you will, and tickle the algorithm, like or comment or ask a question or share an insight, or leave a scathing criticism. I like those too. Those can often be very helpful. Share this recording with someone who you think may enjoy it, or directly support my work on Patreon, or buy me a coffee, whatever feels natural to you. I wish you the restoration of your originary relationships with the angels of insight, adoration, beauty, and truth. May you fulfill the promise of your human incarnation and be very lucky. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to learning together again very soon. Bye-bye for now.